Always focus on the most beneficial possibilities and make the most of your current circumstances. This is law number 4 of the 12 laws of healing, or the 12 laws of inner peace. And if you haven't noticed, I'm home. I made it. I am back home after my perilous adventure where I traveled off to the Philippines in search of my girlfriend, who I suddenly, unexpectedly lost contact with, in order to find answers, but mainly I wanted to provide assistance. I sensed that she may need help, and I wanted to provide assistance. But with an adventure like this, it comes with many potential dangers. For instance, I could get hurt. There could be a car accident. The way people drive down there and in many parts of the developing world is crazy by American standards. Um, I could be targeted as a foreigner, robbed, kidnapped, and held for ransom. Um, I could go all the way there and not be able to find her. I could find myself unsuccessful, having wasted my time and resources on the trip. Or I could find out that everything had been a lie. And I don't know what sort of catfish scenario could have come out of the situation, right? And so I was aware of all of these potential negative outcomes and negative possibilities before I embarked on my adventure. But I focused on the one possible scenario where things could go properly. I focused on the potential that I could find her, my loved one, my friend, and provide assistance. This is following the law number 4 of inner peace and healing. A person with a healed mindset doesn't focus on all of the bad that can happen, although they consider the possibilities, but they put their focus on, they put their attention on, they put their drive on, their eyes set on the prize, the end goal, the hope. And for me, that was a possibility that I could find her and provide assistance. And find her I did. And I found out she did need assistance, but mostly mental health assistance. And I am providing that at this time. It can be very mind-boggling that an avoidant or someone with CPTSD would sabotage their own relationship. But for those who have suffered from the emotional dysregulation, they understand, because they may have sabotaged relationships in the past. And so what's really happening for an avoidant or for an anxiously attached person when they look at their relationship and everything's going well? They don't think, let me just stay status quo here and just coast right into success and happiness, because their mind is not focused on success and happiness. Their mind is focused on all the worst possible outcomes, all the least beneficial possibilities. They're catastrophizing. They're in fear. Does that sound familiar? But as a result of being in fear, what you focus on is what you make come true. So an avoidant is focused on the potential that they could lose the person they love so much. And so what do? They lose the person that they love so much. They're focused on the fact that they could be abandoned. So they just go ahead and do the abandoning before they get abandoned, which means that by default, they are abandoned and alone. It's illogical, but we arrive at that conclusion when we're living in the emotions, when we're living as the emotional self. Trauma survivors do this, not because they're evil, not because they hate people, not because they have no empathy for other people, but they actually shut down that empathy for others. They shut down the logic and they just live in the fear and maybe even try to emotionally numb themselves and try to blank out their mind so they don't have to deal with and cope with how they may be hurting others. And they are hurting others. But this is due to trauma, which manifests itself through hypervigilance, which is where trauma survivors are often coping by anticipating and preparing for the worst potential outcome and potential threat, which is a violation of law number 4. The 4th law states that we are to focus on the best possible outcome, on the most beneficial possibility. But with hypervigilance, they're in a heightened state of alertness, and it leads them to focus on the worst possible possibility in order to stay safe and to protect themselves from harm. A lot of times, trauma survivors have negative core beliefs. So they actually believe I'm not safe, others will hurt me, others don't have good intentions towards me, or I'm not worthy. And so in their belief that they're not worthy of their relationships, they destroy them. In their belief of they're not worthy for their job position, they avoid it and destroy it. Trauma survivors have fear of re-victimization. If I couldn't get my mother to love me, how can I get anyone to love me? So they think since their mother was emotionally abusive, since their mother was emotionally neglectful, since their father abandoned them, they believe that this man, this husband, or this girlfriend is going to do the same thing. And so as they get close to the emotional intimacy which they crave, they self-destruct. Because although this is the thing they want the most in life, it's also the thing that scares them the most, because they lived in the juxtaposition of the person that they love the most also being the person that's hurting them the worst. So that's all they know about love. As a result, they have those negative core beliefs about their world and about themselves. And they're hyper focusing on the potential dangers, and they avoid taking risks, even though those risks could lead to something beneficial. And by the way, everything that's beneficial is on the other side of a risk. Trauma survivors are suffering from cognitive distortions, which is a fancy word for untrue thoughts and ways of thinking, such as catastrophizing, which is focusing on the possibility of a severe negative outcome, even exaggerating the danger or the likelihood of it. So you get so focused on the fact that it could possibly happen that you focus on it, and you exaggerate how possible it really could be. Or your fortune telling, where you're predicting all of the possible negative outcomes. He's going to leave me. He's going to do this. She's going to do that. She's judging me, right? We're mind reading. We're fortune telling. We're catastrophizing. This is all cognitive distortion. If we live like that, our world will be a very dark place. And guess what? We make exactly what it is we're thinking. You can't turn it off. You are a creator. You're a mini creator. You're a being made in God's image. You're too powerful. So what you think will come true. What you focus your mind on will be the end goal that you will actually reach. That's just life. That's how the universe is made, and that's how you're made as a powerful being. And so when we're in trauma, because we focus on trauma, we create more trauma for ourselves. And that's why trauma survivors are so mystified. Why does these bad things always seem to happen to me? Well, at a certain point, it's not in their imagination. They're making more detrimental, catastrophized, negative things happen. They're having more of those experiences over and over again because they focus on that happening. They become so consumed with that happening that they can't make anything else happen, because as these mini creators, as these powerful beings, you keep creating what you're building in your mind, what you're seeing in your mind. Your vision is coming to reality. So we really need to watch what we're visualizing, don't we? Also, trauma survivors are dealing with their emotional dysregulation, which means they feel like they can't control their feelings. So they got so much fear, so much anger, so much sadness, so much despair, so much uncertainty. that it causes them to go into any situation seeing it as a potential threat, seeing it as bad, seeing themselves as being out of control, and just having to do something to turn off the feelings, not understanding that they're powerful beings that can navigate the outside world. They can negotiate with their partners. They can set boundaries in their relationships. They can assert themselves. Not seeing that where they're in emotional dysregulation, they're powerless. It's how do I turn off this emotion? And they have to do something extreme. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, every time because they're in emotional dysregulation. So it's essential that trauma survivors recognize how their past experiences are influencing their present actions and change it. Sever the past from your present and focus on your future. You can take your lessons from the past, but focus on your future, not anxiety ridden catastrophizing. No. Your future is something that you build. You don't have total control over everything that happens, but you have the most control. You have the greatest influence over what your future will be more than any other human. You have the greatest influence over what your future will be more than any other human. So you must take control, sit in that driver's seat and say, no, I want the best for myself because it's my job to love myself and care for myself. That's my universal responsibility. So I want the best possible outcome for myself. And how do you get that? How do you get the best possible outcome for yourself? It's by focusing on the best possible scenario and making the most of your current circumstances. That's the fourth law of inner peace and healing. There's a saying, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Have you ever heard that? Well, I'm sorry to inform you that is an untrue belief. Everything does not happen for a reason. That would imply, if we're just to get really technical about it, that there's someone up in the sky who's looking down on everything down here and he's looking at your life, and then he makes everything in your life happen for his own reason. But that wouldn't really make sense. It certainly doesn't line up with the idea of a loving God. And it certainly gets in the way of our free will, because that means that he's making everything that we do happen for a reason. But that doesn't, then you're just controlled. Then you don't have free will. Someone's controlling you. That wouldn't make sense. It also means that everything bad that's happening, there's some person, some manipulator, like a puppet master in the sky who made all that bad stuff happen to you. Everything does not happen for a reason. Some stuff is random. Some stuff should not have happened to you. When you were assaulted, when you were used or abused, you were victimized. It's not everything happens for a reason. That doesn't happen because somebody wants, some good person wanted that to happen to you. That happened because bad people made bad decisions and did bad things to you. And nothing could hurt a loving God more than seeing bad things happen to you. So we need to let go of this false belief that everything happens for a reason and understand where the true power is. That you actually have the ability to give reason, to give meaning to what has happened in your life. Does that make sense to you? It is up to us to give purpose to our situations in life. It is up to us to turn it into a reason, to make it meaningful. Does that make sense? So like, for instance, let's say your husband is abusive to you and then he leaves you. right? So did all that happen for a reason? Somebody in the sky wanted you to have an abusive husband that then abandoned you? No. But can you make it meaningful? Yes. Can you make it so that it was not in vain and so that there was a reason for it? Yes. And that's what you must focus on. That's making the most of your circumstances and focusing on the best possible possibility. Saying to yourself, okay, what just happened to me? That wasn't right. That was wrong, but I'm not going to allow that to happen to me in vain. I'm going to make that have happened for a reason, for a purpose. And so imagine that this woman who had the husband who was abusive, who left her, decides that she's going to take her time, her free time now in her free space, and build herself and improve herself and start her business and get in the best shape of her life and pursue purpose. As a result, she becomes more attractive. So if there were any children, adult children who went and initially sided with the husband, later on, a few years later, when they see how she's made something of herself, they become attracted back into her life. Perhaps some of them. And she becomes attractive to more friends and more opportunities and potentially even a healthy mate if possible. But what was important to her was to make it not for nothing. She made it so that what happened to her was not in vain. She gave reason to it. She gave meaning to it. That is what you must do. That is the power that is resting on you. You're not the passenger of your life. You're the driver. So don't ride along and say, oh, I'm sure wherever we're going, there will be a reason for it. Don't do that. Do not live your life that way. Get out of the passenger seat, get into the driver's seat, strap on the seatbelt, put the car in gear, and pick a destination and drive your car. Drive your life towards a destination. You take a man who gets a terminal illness. He's struck with a terminal illness. Everyone says, oh, well, I'm sure everything happens for a reason. What? Why did I get struck with a terminal illness? What's the reason for that? There isn't one. You can just decide to curl up into a ball and just die of your terminal illness. There wasn't a reason. But he can make it meaningful. He can make it not in vain by deciding that he's going to start a foundation or a group, a support group, and help other people who are going through the same situation. And then over the next 5 years, the support group grows to thousands and they start to raise awareness, which then raises funding for research for a cure for this illness. And then everyone says, wow, clearly you were chosen for a reason to have this illness, but they are incorrect. He chose to give it a reason. He chose to make it make sense. That is the power that you have. Make it so that your suffering was not in vain by becoming the driver, picking a destination, and driving your car, even if it's a jalopy, over the finish line to your destination. I was successful in my mission in the Philippines because I have laser focus on the best possible outcome. I become a laser towards that. And so while everything was difficult, I missed my initial flight. And then I get there, and then I have to deal with the traffic and the people ripping me off and figuring out who I can trust and going there right away. How am I going to get a vehicle? How am I going to get a car? Right? All of the difficulty, all of the naysayers, all of the pressure. But I'm laser focused on the goal, the positive outcome, the best possible benefit that can come out of this scenario, that I can find my friend and provide assistance. That's the best possible outcome. So that is where the majority of the focus goes. I remember when I was a kid, there was some guy giving a presentation at an assembly in school, And he says to me, which struck me as the most obvious thing, he says, hey, when you're riding your bike, you want to, if you see a pothole, you don't want to focus on the pothole. You want to focus on the path around the pothole. And I'm sitting there like, duh. Like, who would focus on the pothole and ride their bike in the pothole? But he had to give the illustration. Clearly, someone would think like, oh, let me focus on the pothole, and they would fall into the pothole. I don't know if it was a bicycle safety presentation, but I just remember thinking, is this assembly over? Because this is too obvious. But when we are in emotional dysregulation, what would seem logical is not plainly obvious to us. So I tell you, when you are driving along the cliffs of life, you do not focus on the cliff on the side of the road. You focus on your destination that is ahead. You focus on the part of the road that is there for you to ride on so that you can stay on the road. Because what's going to happen to you if you drive like this? Ooh, oh, that's a big road. That's a big cliff. Whoa, right? Because you're not paying attention. You're going to run into an obstacle up here. You're going to miss where you're supposed to veer, and you're going to fall off the cliff. And that's what happens to people who focus on all the worst possible outcomes, all the worst possible things that can happen. Everyone's judgment, they're focused on all the worst. And so all they can see is the worst, and all they have is the worst. I've seen so many people sabotage their relationships, not just with me, but with me, not just girlfriends. We're talking about actual regular friends. We're talking about ex-wife. We're talking about clients. They cut off their relationship with me. The best person they can have a relationship with, that's a human that they know of. And then how is that going to end for them? Not good. Not good. It's life or death out here. For many, could be suicide. For others, dying from an autoimmune disease. It's not a joke. It's the worst possible thing you can do is become so focused on the negative outcome that you can no longer drive on the road and stay on track to the best possible possibility. I knew how to do this because I had done it in my life before. I can't tell you all the stories, but just to give you an example, when my wife and I came out of the jungle of South America, after living there for 4 years, we were depleted financially. We had spent our entire life savings living there and supporting ourselves. I did not get picked up by any sponsorship deal. And so it was time to come home. Also, I was ready to stop living in a third world country and come back to civilization, exercise my right. And so I came back here and we decided on Chicago. And so I arrived in the city of Chicago without barely a dime in my pocket. I had a couple $100 or something like that from working for my parents who lived in a city nearby. But I knew I couldn't work for them for long because I didn't have a really safe situation there. So I decided to start a business, and the business I came up with was something that looked trendy at the moment, which was mounting televisions. And so I watched YouTube videos and shadowed experts who were doing it. And then with no experience and no qualifications, I started advertising myself as a television mounter. And I got my first jobs, but I didn't even have a drill, which you need if you're going to mount a television. And so I would go to Home Depot and I would rent a drill, and then I would use it and then return the drill at the end of the day. And I was doing this for a number of weeks, supporting us, my wife and I, by going out and renting this drill and then mounting people's televisions and then returning this drill. Eventually my wife goes, Why don't you just buy a drill? I had didn't even realize I had become successful enough that I could afford to purchase my own $100 drill. So I think that's all it costs, right? So so eventually I had worked my way from not being able to afford the tool I needed to do the job to being able to buy my own tool for the job. And then I continued moving forward and mounting these televisions and growing my business, right? Until I could actually afford to invest in the next business. And so then I invested in a health and beauty business. And then I worked that business until I put myself into a position where I could get funding to open a restaurant. So then I had three businesses: technology, health and beauty, restaurant. And then I used leverage the position when I was in the restaurant to get someone to give me free rent to open another restaurant. They gave me a few months free rent there. So at my peak, I have four businesses, three storefronts, and two of them were restaurants in the city of Chicago. And I was taking my wife traveling wherever she wanted to go because she was spoiled and just got whatever she wanted. Now, how in the world did I do that? I was focused on the best possible possibility. It wasn't that every idea I came up with succeeded. There were many failures. But a person who's focused on all the worst can't succeed. Like when I would have City of Chicago licensing come in and they would be like, "What's going on? We're checking your license." If the mindset is we're gonna fail, I'm gonna get shut down, I'm gonna get shut down. When you get an adversity like that, they come in looking for your license, and then you go, "Oh no, I don't know if I have this paperwork, I don't know if I have the right paperwork," and then they issue you a citation. If your mindset is we're gonna fail, I'm gonna fail, we're gonna get shut down, are you gonna show up to the court date for that citation? No. You're gonna be like, I can't. It's too scary. They're probably gonna. This isn't gonna work out, and then you don't show up for the court date because you're too scared, because you're in emotional dysregulation, because you're in hypervigilance. You can't handle the pressure, right? Because you're not in your logical mind, so you're weak. And then what's the judge gonna do? Did the person show up? No. Okay. Well, they're shut. The license revoked. Business license revoked. Oh, I got shut down. How did that happen? Oh no, why do the bad things always happen to me? Because you don't focus on the most positive possibility. You're violating the law of the universe. You're focused on the worst possible possibility, so that's what comes true. I thought I would fail, and so therefore I did. But in my case, in real life, I'm thinking I will succeed, I will overcome, right? And I did get citations. And then what did I do? I showed up to the court date with my full suit on, walking in. They're like, "Oh, the other lawyers thought I was a lawyer." They're like trying to brief me on the situation. They're like, "Wait a second, you're not a lawyer?" Like, no, I'm the defendant in this case. Oh, right? Because the energy that I'm coming in with is we will not fail. I will not fail. I can't accept the possibility of failure. So therefore, it's not going to happen. I will fight it. And if I lose it, I'm going to appeal it. I'm always going to fight until I get the goal. I'm focused on the best possible thing that can happen, which is that I will succeed. And then what happens? The judge says, with zero passion, all right, you got 30 days to pay this fine. And then what do? Do I shut down? No, because I'm focused on the best possible possibility. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to get the $500 together to pay the fine, and we're going to remain open. And that is how the universe works. That's where your success is. It's on the other side of your positive thoughts. So it is your job to focus on the best possible possibility and not let go. Keep laser focus on the best possible possibility and make the most of your situation in life. And as a result, it could take some months, could take some years, but you will find success because that's what you were made to do. You are powerful.